Supreme Commander Jarak of the Vexari Hegemony stood motionless on the observation deck of his dreadnought Inevitable Conquest, his scaled skin absorbing the dim blue light reflected from the planet below. Earth rotated slowly on the main view screen, its swirling cloud patterns and vast oceans marking it as a prize worth taking. His inner eyelids clicked as he magnified a nighttime view of the human civilization. A sprawling network of lights betraying their presence even from orbit. Primitive, he remarked, mandibles clicking softly in what his species considered amusement. They still burn hydrocarbons for energy. Behind him, the command crew worked in efficient silence, each of the 8-limbed Vexari officers interfacing with quantum terminals that process terabytes of surveillance data. The ship had been stationed in the shadow of Mars for 3 standard cycles, gathering intelligence on the species that would become the hegemony's 18th conquest. The assessment report is complete, Supreme Commander, announced Sub-Commander Krulva, approaching with the characteristic 3-legged gait of Vexari military personnel. I believe you will find the tactical outlook satisfactory. Jarak extended a taloned hand, accepting the crystalline data cube. He inserted it into his neural interface, the information flooding directly into his augmented consciousness. Immediately, he had access to complete analyses of human military capabilities, command structures, and response protocols. The data had been gathered through a combination of electromagnetic surveillance, captured communications, and direct observation via stealth drones that had infiltrated military installations on every continent. They still organized their defense forces by geographical region. Jarak noted with derision. Even after millennia of conflict, they maintained separate command structures. Laughable. The neural feed displayed Earth's nuclear capabilities, their most advanced weapons, which the Vexari had already neutralized through targeted quantum disruption fields. Without their deterrent weapons, humans would be forced to rely on conventional armies. Against the hegemony's plasma weaponry and gravitic manipulation technology, such resistance would be futile. Prepare a strike team, Jarak ordered. I wish to personally inspect their orbital surveillance systems. 6 hours later, Jarak led a squad of Vexari elites through the vacuum of space toward a human military satellite. His exosuit, a marvel of hegemony engineering, rendered him nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. With practiced precision, the team attached themselves to the primitive structure, bypassing its security systems with casual efficiency. These encryption protocols are simplistic, observed his security specialist. Their most advanced defense technology is centuries behind our standard capabilities. Jarak personally extracted the satellite's data core, his claws delicately removing components that human engineers had believed secure. Back aboard the flagship, his tactical AI incorporated the new intelligence, calculating battle projections with cold precision. The result, 98.7% probability of Earth's complete subjugation within 14 standard days. That evening, Jarak stood before the quantum communication array, addressing the Hegemony Council, 7 ancient Vexari, whose combined military experience spanned 2,000 years of successful conquests. Honorable Council, Jarak began, his posture rigidly formal. I am pleased to report that Earth represents minimal challenge to hegemony expansion. These humans fight like children, clinging to rigid hierarchies and telegraphing their movements with primitive electromagnetic communications. Their most advanced weapons have been neutralized, and their armies are scattered across isolated landmasses. The eldest council member leaned forward, compound eyes glistening with interest. You recommend immediate resource extraction. Then? Indeed, Jarak replied with confident finality. Diplomacy would be wasted on such primitives. They must be taught their place in the galactic hierarchy before extraction begins. Only Science Officer Lyritha, monitoring the briefing from her laboratory 3 decks below, dared question the consensus. Her obsessive attention to detail had uncovered anomalies in human historical warfare records that troubled her analytical mind. That night, alone in her research chamber, she compiled her findings into a private report. The patterns didn't align with previous conquests. Where other species showed linear, predictable evolution of warfare techniques, humans displayed something different, something the algorithms weren't capturing. Recursive adaptation, she whispered to herself, studying footage of human conflicts across centuries. They don't just evolve their tactics against environmental threats. They evolve them against each other's evolving tactics. First light crept across the Pacific as hundreds of Vexari dropships pierced Earth's atmosphere, their sleek obsidian hulls absorbing radar signals like hungry predators. Commander Gerak had chosen dawn across multiple time zones, the lowest alert status for human military installations according to their intelligence. The invasion's opening moments unfolded with mathematical precision, every strike choreographed by algorithms honed across 17 previous conquests. From the tactical holodeck aboard the inevitable conquest, Gerak observed the synchronized attacks through a neural feed that connected him directly to his battlefield commanders. His primary visual cortex processed dozens of simultaneous assaults as plasma bombardment vaporized aircraft carriers in the South China Sea, turned hardened missile silos in North America to slag, and reduced European command centers to smoldering craters. Phase 1 proceeding at 99.3% efficiency, reported the tactical officer, his voice tinged with the respectful monotone expected of subordinates. Resistance is within predicted parameters. Gerak's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he magnified a particular feed showing a human naval vessel bisected by precision plasma fire. The thermal signatures of dying humans registered as fleeting sparks in his enhanced vision. Note the precision. He instructed the circle of junior officers observing the operation. We leave civilian infrastructure intact, for now. Their governments will recognize the futility of resistance when they see our capacity for both destruction and restraint. The tactical display split into 6 segments, showing simultaneous strikes across every inhabited continent, each attack executed with surgical precision according to the battle algorithm that had served the hegemony for centuries. The pattern was simple but effective. Eliminate command and control capabilities first, then neutralize heavy weapons platforms, and finally isolate military units from one another to prevent coordinated response. Prepare Phase 2 communications, Gerak ordered. Once their military leadership comprehends the situation, we should receive capitulation transmissions within 8 standard hours. But 12 hours later, the expected surrender communications had not arrived. Instead, the tactical display showed something Gerak had never witnessed in his 3 centuries of military service. Human forces were regrouping in patterns that defied Vexari military doctrine. Scattered defensive units had abandoned traditional formations, dispersing into smaller groups that melted into civilian populations. More troubling still, communication bursts continued despite the confirmed destruction of what intelligence had identified as critical command nodes. Explain this, Gerak demanded, his talons leaving deep gouges in the metallic command console. A junior tactical officer approached cautiously, aware that bearers of bad news often suffered under the commander's wrath. Supreme Commander, they appear to be improvising. Their units are forming ad hoc command structures without central coordination. Impossible, Gerak hissed, his inner eyelids clicking rapidly in agitation. Their military doctrine is well documented. This is merely their death throes, a final desperate resistance before acceptance of our dominance. He slammed his fist into the nearest display, shattering its crystalline surface. Accelerate Phase 2. Launch the secondary wave immediately. I want their remaining military assets reduced to atoms before the next planetary rotation. 3 decks below in her laboratory, Science Officer Lyertha reviewed footage of human defenders repurposing civilian infrastructure into makeshift weapons platforms. One particularly disturbing feed showed human soldiers adapting commercial drones to deliver improvised explosives against Vexari ground forces. Another revealed civilian communications networks being rapidly reconfigured to maintain military coordination despite the destruction of dedicated military channels. With growing concern, Lyertha began compiling a new dataset. She labeled it Adaptive Responses, Hypothesis Testing, and isolated a pattern the invasion algorithms had failed to predict. Humans weren't following any recognizable military doctrine. Instead, they were creating new tactics in real time, sharing innovations virally across surviving units. The response time is orders of magnitude faster than our models predicted, she murmured to herself, compound eyes reflecting dozens of screens, showing humans doing what the algorithms said they couldn't do. This isn't in the historical record of any prior conquest. She knew Jarok would dismiss her concerns. The commander's career had been built on the infallibility of hegemony battle doctrine. But as she watched humans adapting with alarming speed to Vexeri tactics, Lyertha felt something rare among her species, doubt about the inevitable outcome of a conquest. 3 weeks into what should have been a 14-day conquest, Supreme Commander Jarok paced the war room with uncharacteristic agitation. His taloned feet left visible scratch marks on the polished obsidian floor with each turn. The holographic battle map suspended in the center of the chamber displayed another critical failure. The 6th Vexeri supply shuttle destroyed in the last planetary rotation. Impossible, he hissed, mandibles clicking in rapid succession, a sign of extreme stress in Vexeri physiology. Show me the attack footage again. The tactical officer complied immediately, projecting a 3-dimensional recording of the most recent human attack. A small team of humans, no more than 12 individuals, had somehow infiltrated a Vexeri forward operating base in what the locals called Nevada. Using a combination of salvaged Vexeri technology and improvised explosives, they had destroyed 3 shuttles and damaged a tactical operations center before disappearing into the surrounding desert terrain. Magnify the weapons they're carrying, Jarok ordered, his voice deadly quiet. The image expanded, showing humans wielding modified Vexeri plasma rifles. The weapons had been crudely altered to accommodate human physiology, shorter stock, repositioned trigger mechanism, and what appeared to be a cooling system attached to the power core. They've had these weapons for less than 15 days, Jarok whispered, more to himself than his subordinates. They've barely had time to learn which end fires, let alone modify the internal components. His logistics officer, a veteran of 7 planetary conquests, approached with visible reluctance. Supreme Commander, I must report critical supply shortages in sectors 7 through 12. The humans are targeting our resource distribution networks rather than engaging our combat units directly. 38% of our ground forces now report ammunition constraints. In a burst of fury, Jarok smashed his armored fist through the holographic display, sending energy particles scattering across the chamber. Enough. If they wish to attack our supplies, we will eliminate theirs, target their food production centers, starve them into submission. The tactical team quickly compiled data on Earth's major agricultural regions, selecting primary targets for orbital bombardment. Within hours, a squadron of Vexeri attack craft launched from the flagship, their mission parameters clear: destroy the humans' ability to feed themselves. When the squadron commander returned, his report triggered the first emergency council meeting of the invasion. Supreme Commander, the officer began, mandibles quivering with apprehension. We successfully destroyed all designated targets with 100% efficiency. However, he hesitated, clearly fearing Jarok's reaction. Continue, Jarok commanded, his voice dangerously soft. Their food production is not centralized, as our intelligence suggested. We encountered thousands of small agricultural operations, urban cultivation centers, hydroponics facilities within civilian structures, and food storage networks dispersed throughout their population centers. He straightened, delivering the final blow. Our analysts calculate that despite our successful strikes, their nutritional infrastructure remains at approximately 89% capacity. That night, alone in his private quarters, Jarok reviewed Lyertha's classified report. She had been studying human evolutionary history and had made a disturbing connection that the initial intelligence assessment had overlooked. Unlike every species we've conquered, her report stated, humans evolved as persistence hunters, physically pursuing prey until exhaustion. This evolutionary path optimized their neurology for adaptive problem-solving under pressure and stress. They don't fight like warriors following doctrine. They fight like predators who spent millennia hunting each other. Jarak stared at the final conclusion of her analysis. Our tactical algorithms are designed to counter predictable, doctrine-based warfare. Humans don't follow doctrine. They improvise, adapt, and overcome. Every time we establish a pattern, they evolve a counter-response. For the first time in his decorated military career, Supreme Commander Jarak felt something entirely alien to his species' psychology: doubt. The metallic taste of fear lingered in his mouth as he closed the report and gazed out at the blue planet that refused to submit according to schedule. "Deploy the mist," Commander Jarak ordered, his voice uncharacteristically strained as he addressed his inner circle in the flagship's secure chamber. The Hegemony Council's latest quantum transmission had been explicit: either produce results or face replacement, a euphemism for execution in Vexari culture. The senior officers exchanged glances with their compound eyes, an almost imperceptible movement that nonetheless conveyed their collective unease. In 17 planetary conquests, the Vexari had deployed neurological weapons only 7 times, and only when faced with unexpected resistance. "The Bioweapons Division stands ready," Supreme Commander, responded the Chief Medical Officer. "The mist has been calibrated for human neurophysiology based on subjects captured during ground operations." In the flagship's cavernous weapons bay, technicians in iridescent containment suits prepared gleaming silver canisters containing the neurological agent. The mist was a marvel of Vexari bioengineering, a compound that induced temporary paralysis without damaging valuable infrastructure or resources. The microscopic particles were programmed to target specific neural pathways, rendering a population helpless without causing permanent harm to potential labor resources. Dropships departed in waves, releasing clouds of iridescent particles over major human population centers. The operation was executed with the precision that had always been the hallmark of Vexari military doctrine. Jarak watched through drone feeds as the mist descended on human cities, drifting through streets and buildings like ethereal tendrils. The initial reports confirmed success. Thousands of humans collapsed in mid-stride, their nervous systems temporarily overridden by the alien compound. "Resistance will end within 72 hours, the bioweapons chief assured him. "Without central coordination, their military units will be isolated and easily neutralized." Yet within hours, something unprecedented occurred. In major medical facilities, personnel wearing improvised filtration systems continued functioning. Through his surveillance network, Jarak observed human scientists in sealed laboratory environments, analyzing the compound with alarming efficiency. 3 days later, when humans should have been begging for mercy, Jarak received intelligence that sent shockwaves through his command staff. Humans had synthesized a countermeasure. More disturbingly, civilian resistance cells had established a distribution network using technologies as basic as compressed air systems and garden sprayers to deliver the antidote. "How?" Jarak thundered, his rage manifesting as he physically lifted a subordinate and hurled him across the command deck. "Their medical technology is centuries behind ours. The compound's molecular structure was designed to be indecipherable to their primitive analysis methods." He convened an emergency council meeting, where Lyritha finally spoke with the authority her research had earned. The science officer's typically submissive demeanor had vanished, replaced by the confidence of one whose warnings had been vindicated. Their medical databases contain responses to thousands of pathogens, both natural and engineered, she explained, displaying historical footage of primitive humans treating wounds with specific plants and developing early vaccination techniques. They've been fighting biological warfare since before they had written language. On the main screen, she displayed a timeline of human pandemics and their responses. Their scientists don't start from zero. They build on millennia of adaptation. Every human carries immune memory from countless epidemics. The casualty reports arrived. 38 Vexari outposts overrun by humans who should have been paralyzed, but instead fought with desperate coordination. The supposedly inferior beings had not only survived the mist, but had turned the situation to their advantage, attacking while Vexari forces waited for a capitulation that never came. Chirac dismissed his officers, remaining alone on the command deck. He stared at the tactical display, the blue planet now marked with red indicators of Vexari losses. The taste of fear, once unfamiliar, had become his constant companion. The invasion timetable, once so certain, now stretched into an uncertain future where, for the first time, Supreme Commander Chirac could envision defeat. 6 months into what was supposed to be a 14-day conquest, Supreme Commander Chirac slouched in his command throne, his once immaculate exoskeleton now dull and poorly maintained. Sleep had become a distant memory. His scaled skin, formerly lustrous and a point of pride among his kind, now hung in dry patches that his medical staff quietly attributed to stress hormones never before recorded in Vexari physiology. The tactical display showed the unthinkable. Humans piloting what appeared to be crude but functional replicas of Vexari interceptors. The captured footage came from a skirmish over the region humans called Australia, where 3 Vexari scout ships had been ambushed and destroyed by these hybrid craft. "Magnify Sector 7, Chirac ordered, his voice hollow with exhaustion. The display zoomed to show a modified Vexari plasma cannon mounted on a human ground vehicle, its design altered to accommodate human physiology. Even as they watched, the weapon fired, and another Vexari dropship exploded in brilliant blue flame against the desert backdrop. "How are they doing this?" he demanded, his composure finally shattering. "Their technological advancement cycle should take decades. We calculated centuries before they could comprehend our propulsion systems, let alone weapons technology." His intelligence chief approached cautiously, mandibles clicking nervously as he presented the latest analysis. "Supreme Commander, we've identified communication patterns suggesting unprecedented collaboration among human factions. Former enemy nations now share research seamlessly." The officer activated a supplementary display showing the flow of information across human networks. A weapons physicist in what they call Russia develops a concept. Engineers in Japan refine it. Manufacturers in Germany produce it. And within days, resistance fighters in Brazil deploy it against our forces. A tactical officer interrupted with visible reluctance. "Commander, we've lost the Singapore base." "That's the 4th this cycle." The casualty reports flooded the command deck. The invasion force, originally numbering 300,000 elite troops, now reduced to under 210,000. Across Earth, downed Vexari ships were becoming instant laboratories, their technology dissected and repurposed with terrifying speed. When the tactical briefing concluded, Chirac retreated to his private quarters, a space once decorated with trophies from previous conquests, but now stripped of ornamentation, a physical manifestation of his diminishing confidence. He found Science Officer Lyritha waiting for him, her demeanor suggesting the completion of some significant research, without authorization or invitation. Unthinkable in normal Vexari hierarchy. She activated his personal display terminal. "I've completed my comprehensive analysis of human warfare evolution," she announced without preamble. It was never about their technology. She displayed a historical timeline spanning thousands of years of human conflict. Every other species we conquered developed warfare against external threats, predators, environmental challenges, resource scarcity. She highlighted a critical distinction. Humans are the only species we've encountered who spent thousands of years fighting primarily each other. The implications hit Chirac like physical blows. Every tactic we use, they've seen some version of, from each other. "Precisely," Lyritha confirmed. "Our algorithmic warfare worked against species with uniform military evolution, but humans have been fighting humans who fight like humans who are trying to outsmart humans. Their tactical diversity is beyond our calculations." Chirac stared at visualization of human adaptation rates, compared to previous conquered species. The difference wasn't incremental, it was exponential. "We've been using the same battle strategies for 17 conquests," he realized aloud. "They've been developing countermeasures to their own tactics for 10,000 years." Outside the viewport, Earth's blue surface seemed to mock him, no longer a prize waiting to be claimed, but a nightmare that would define his legacy. The Vexeri had encountered something unprecedented. A species whose greatest strength wasn't their technology, but their endless capacity to adapt. The Hegemony flagship's inner sanctum pulsed with crimson emergency lighting as Commander Jarok entered his authorization codes into ancient systems. Behind triple reinforced doors embellished with the conquered worlds of the Hegemony, he approached a weapons console that had remained untouched since the vessel's commissioning decades ago. His clawed finger hovered over a crystalline activation panel. The air around him seemed to grow dense with significance. He would be only the third Supreme Commander in Hegemony history to authorize the ultimate weapon. "The Council has authorized deployment of the Worldbreaker," he announced to his inner circle, their voices hollow in the sacred space. "Earth will be rendered uninhabitable for biological life, but its mineral wealth will remain harvestable." The weapon, used only twice in Hegemony history, would trigger cascading tectonic instability, preserving valuable resources while eliminating resistance. The failure of a conventional conquest was unprecedented, but the Worldbreaker would ensure that, at minimum, no other species would witness Vexeri defeat. In the adjacent laboratory, Science Officer Lyertha received the activation alert on her personal terminal. Her compound eyes reflected dozens of displays showing human adaptation curves that defied all Vexeri models. She had spent the last cycles analyzing not just human warfare, but human civilization itself. Her conclusion was devastating. The Hegemony's conquest model was fundamentally flawed. Their approach to galactic domination had always relied on technological superiority over more specialized or less adaptable species. But humans represented something else entirely, a generalist species with unprecedented adaptive capabilities. Lyertha made her decision. She opened the emergency channel to all ships. "This is Science Officer Lyertha." Her voice resonated through every Vexeri vessel orbiting Earth. "The Supreme Commander has failed to understand the fundamental nature of our enemy. This failure threatens not just our mission, but our civilization's approach to the galaxy." She transmitted her complete human analysis. Data showing that humans possessed adaptation rates orders of magnitude greater than any previously encountered species. More troublingly, her predictive model suggested that if the Vexeri deployed the Worldbreaker, surviving humans in off-world colonies would eventually find the Vexeri homeworld and respond with devastating creativity. "The Hegemony conquest model has encountered its limitation," she concluded. "We must adapt or become extinct ourselves." The fleet fragmented into chaos. On 17 ships, officers loyal to Lyertha seized control, immediately transmitting surrender signals toward Earth. On 23 others, loyalists maintained Jarok's commands, preparing to support the Worldbreaker deployment. The remaining vessels fell into confused communication blackouts as internal power struggles erupted between factions. Meanwhile, deep in Earth's Pacific Ocean, a modified nuclear submarine surfaced silently beside a downed Vexeri cruiser. From its hatch emerged 12 humans in experimental suits built from salvaged Vexeri armor. Their leader, Admiral Helena Chen, checked the neural interface she shouldn't be able to use. "Stealth systems operational," she subvocalized, the neural link translating her thoughts into commands. "Worldbreaker activation detected on enemy flagship. Omega Protocol authorized." The infiltration team, drawn from special forces units across 7 nations, boarded a partially disabled Vexeri supply vessel. Rather than attempting to match Vexeri physical capabilities, they exploited weaknesses the aliens never considered. Moving during shift changes when attention wavered, hiding in maintenance shafts too small for Vexeri bodies, using psychological tactics that exploited hierarchical instincts that the aliens couldn't override. While the Vexeri fleet tore itself apart in civil conflict, Admiral Chen's team approached the flagship undetected. They employed strategies no algorithm could predict because they were developed specifically for this mission by humans who now understood Vexari psychology better than the Vexari understood humans. The world-breaker countdown had begun. Earth had 3 hours before geological apocalypse, and the fate of the planet rested with 12 humans armed with nothing but ingenuity and stolen technology against the most powerful warship in the known galaxy. Alert klaxons blared throughout the flagship as Admiral Chen's team breached the final security perimeter surrounding the world-breaker chamber. Commander Jarok barricaded himself in the inner sanctum, watching security feeds in disbelief as humans systematically disabled his elite guards one by one. Not with superior firepower or overwhelming numbers, but with techniques he could barely comprehend, redirecting Vexari strength against itself, exploiting joint vulnerabilities in their exoskeletons that Vexari medical science had documented but military doctrine had never considered relevant to combat. The humans moved with a synchronization that overcame the aliens' superior reflexes, working in pairs to create openings that would be impossible for a single attacker. Impossible, Jarok whispered, mandibles quivering as his royal guards, genetically enhanced warriors bred for combat, fell to creatures half their size. The security doors shuddered under precisely targeted explosives. With a mixture of resignation and determination, Jarok activated his personal shield, a shimmering purple field encasing his 7-foot frame, and drew the ceremonial blade of conquest from its ornamental scabbard. The weapon, a symbol of his rank and the hegemony's dominance, had never been used in actual combat. In 3 centuries of military service, the simulations and theoretical combat instruction had always been sufficient for a species that conquered through overwhelming technological superiority. The doors blasted inward in a shower of metal fragments and crystalline components. Through swirling smoke stepped 3 humans in modified Vexari armor, patches of their own technology integrated with the alien materials in ways Vexari engineers would consider sacrilege. The center figure removed her helmet, revealing a face creased with the determination that had become emblematic of human resistance. Jarok recognized her from intelligence briefings. Admiral Helena Chen, former commander of a submerged vessel, now leader of the Joint Special Operations Command. Supreme Commander Jarok, she announced, her voice translated by salvaged Vexari tech. Surrender the world-breaker controls. Jarok lunged with a speed that had always guaranteed victory in simulations. His blade arced toward Chen's neck in a stroke designed to decapitate. The human stepped aside with fluid precision, her movement economy suggesting decades of combat experience. His momentum carried him past her, and he spun to deliver a secondary strike. This attack met a defensive technique he'd never witnessed. The human redirected his force downward, while stepping inside his reach, using the leverage of his own momentum to send him crashing into his own command console. Rising in fury, Jarok activated his blade's energy field, causing the ceremonial weapon to hum with destructive potential. "You primitives cannot comprehend real warfare," he snarled, mandibles flaring with aggressive pheromones. Chen's team spread out in a triangular formation, communicating with subtle hand signals that conveyed complex tactical information with minimal movement. A system evolved through centuries of small unit tactics. They moved not as individuals but as a coordinated system, each anticipating the other's actions through training so ingrained it approached instinct. "We've been fighting ourselves for 10,000 years, Chen replied calmly, drawing a simple metal staff that extended with the press of a button. Every technique you know was developed against predictable enemies. As the humans engaged him simultaneously from 3 directions, using fighting styles drawn from different Earth cultures, Jarok experienced his final revelation. What he had dismissed as primitive was actually hyper-specialized. Warfare techniques refined through endless conflict against equally intelligent, equally adaptable adversaries. His shield failed under precisely targeted strikes that exploited frequency harmonics his training had never covered. His ceremonial blade, optimized for intimidation, rather than combat efficiency, shattered against Chen's simple metal staff, a weapon perfected through millennia of human combat evolution. As darkness closed in, Supreme Commander Sharok of the Vexari hegemony recognized his fatal error. Humans hadn't merely developed technology, they had evolved warfare itself into an art form where adaptation, not superiority, determined survival. The Vexari flagship, renamed Reckoning by its new occupants, drifted in low Earth orbit, its alien architecture now adorned with the flags of 17 nations. Inside the cavernous Great Hall, once reserved for hegemony victory celebrations, delegations of humans and Vexari faced each other across a crescent-shaped table fashioned from materials of both worlds. Science Officer Laritha, now bearing the hastily created insignia of Acting Commander, stood before the quantum transmission array. Her posture conveyed both deference and newfound authority, an evolution in Vexari body language that would have been unthinkable months earlier. On the shimmering holographic display, the 9 members of the Hegemony Council watched with expressions ranging from rage to fascination. Honored Council, Laritha began, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into 17 human languages simultaneously. I present my final analysis of the Earth campaign. The display shifted to show battle statistics no Vexari could ignore. A conquest force reduced by 63%, 47 vessels captured intact, and the unprecedented defeat of a supreme commander in personal combat. Our fundamental error, she continued, displaying neural maps comparing Vexari and human cognition, was mistaking technological progression for civilization advancement. The display showed humans rapidly adopting and modifying Vexari technology, while Vexari forces struggled to deviate from programmed responses. Humans developed thousands of competing warfare philosophies because they evolved fighting themselves, creating an adaptive capacity our algorithms cannot model. In the council chambers light years away, the elder rose, compound eyes glittering with indignation. You suggest these primitives are our equals. Admiral Helena Chen stepped forward, still wearing the modified Vexari armor that had become her trademark. The exoskeleton had been further customized, now seamlessly integrated with human components that enhanced its capabilities beyond original Vexari specifications. We suggest, she responded with measured confidence, that your understanding of advancement is incomplete. She activated a holographic display showing 17 formerly conquered worlds. We've analyzed your conquest patterns using the same adaptive techniques that defeated your invasion. Your subjugated worlds are watching this transmission through channels your algorithms never detected. On screens across the galaxy, oppressed species witnessed the unthinkable. Vexari surrender, hope, an emotion long extinct on conquered worlds, rekindled in diverse biological forms across 17 planets. The Hegemony Council deliberated in their private quantum channel, their debate visible only as shifting patterns of light. When they returned, their decision was delivered by the youngest member, the only one whose thinking remained flexible enough to comprehend the paradigm shift. The hegemony recognizes Earth's unique status, the counselor announced, mandibles stiff with reluctance. We initialize peace protocols and will withdraw from your system. 3 months later, the first human diplomatic vessels departed Earth, carrying not just ambassadors, but liberation specialists trained to help conquered species overthrow their Vexari governors. The ships bore a new insignia, Earth's continents surrounded by 17 stars, representing the worlds awaiting freedom. In her new laboratory aboard the human flagship Unity, Laritha studied the faces of her human colleagues with her compound eyes. The concept of redemption, of learning from failure, had been alien to Vexari thinking, where failure simply meant replacement. Yet these humans had not only spared those who surrendered but integrated them into their society, valuing the perspective of former enemies. She realized then that the hegemony's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating human warfare. It was failing to recognize that humans' greatest weapon wasn't their technology, or even their adaptability. It was their capacity to turn former enemies into allies, a concept so foreign to Vexeri, thinking that no algorithm could have predicted it. As the Unity accelerated toward the First World awaiting liberation, Lyartha understood that the galaxy was about to undergo a transformation more profound than any technological revolution, the dissemination of humanity's most powerful adaptation: cooperation across difference.